I came back earlier. There was an empty plate on the kitchen table, a fork off to one side, as though someone had just been here. Maybe it was me, maybe it was her. Maybe it was nobody. I stared at that white circle of ceramic and realized I didn't even know who I was hungry for anymore. My name is David Harper. 35, from Oregon, living in Seattle. I used to be the man who always believed in decency and honesty. People said I had good values, loyalty, hard work, love of family. They said I was dependable. They never said I was exciting or spontaneous, but they said I was a good man. Maybe that was enough to get by. Maybe not. I'm looking at this empty plate, thinking, I should put it away, wash it, do something with it. But my arms hang limp at my sides. My mind is too busy crawling through broken glass to command my body to move. I breathe in. No smell of dinner, no sign of anything. Just silence. The sink drips. And then I remember the party. I remember how Jake, my kid brother, had insisted on throwing a celebration for my return, after I'd been gone for 2 weeks on a training trip. He said, "Come on, Dave, you deserve this. Been working too hard. Let's have some fun." The idea of Jake planning a party for me should have made me smile. But even then, something felt off. Now I see the empty plate on the table. Maybe she used it, maybe she didn't. Maybe I used it before I left earlier. My memories bleed into one another. I can't be sure. I blink and realize I haven't even closed the front door yet. I walk back, shut it, lock it. The lock slides with a dull click. Feels final. Feels like a door to a crypt. Jake is the kind of guy who doesn't do anything small. When he planned that party, he had everything set up, a roaring barbecue, a cooler full of beer, wine from some local vineyard he discovered, and music that rattled the windows. He invited people from the neighborhood, from the office, from old college circles. He said, "Dave, you're too serious. Let me show you how to have a good time." I was too tired to argue. I'd just gotten home from a draining business trip, a whirlwind of late-night strategy sessions and early morning presentations. My brain was still half-sizzling from all the corporate nonsense I'd been dealing with. So I let Jake handle it. My wife, Catherine, or Katie, as she likes to be called, helped him. She's 32, a designer who thrives on color and shape and emotional impact. Maybe that's why she was drawn to Jake. He's all color. I'm just a neutral tone, a safe background that once felt like a stable anchor. But maybe she needed more. Maybe she needed to spill over the edges. She always said she wanted passion. But I never guessed how far that longing would take her. For a moment, at that party, I actually felt alive. People were laughing, hugging me, congratulating me on God knows what. They said, "Dave, you look good," or "We missed you." My wife leaned in and kissed my cheek, smiling. Her green eyes sparkled. She wore a light summer dress, and her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail. She smelled like lavender and something sweet. And then I saw Jake move up behind her, so casual, placing a hand on her shoulder, and I swear, for a half second, her body tensed in a different way than it does for me. A flicker. Something I might have dismissed if I wasn't so used to reading her every movement. The hours at that party blurred. We ate, we drank, the music thumped. Jake was center stage, telling jokes, pouring shots, playing the confident clown. I drifted from conversation to conversation, always with a forced grin. A neighbor asked me how the business trip had gone, and I gave mechanical answers. "Oh, it was fine. Busy. Learned a lot. Good to be back." The standard small talk. Then I'd glance around and see Katie near Jake. She'd laugh at something he said, a bit too freely, or she'd place a hand on his arm. It burned my vision. But I told myself, "You're imagining things. Jake's your brother, for God's sake. And she's your wife. They're just close. Family. I was wrong. But that evening I was still naive enough to think it was all just tension from traveling or exhaustion playing tricks on me. I slipped back to that moment with the empty plate. I'm standing in my own kitchen now, hours after the party ended, feeling as if I've walked into the house of a stranger. Everything is the same but reeks of something intangible. I pick up the plate, place it in the sink. The clink of porcelain is too loud. My mind is buzzing with what happened next. I remember not sleeping that night. Katie had gone to bed before me, or so she said. I pretended to head out to buy something at the store or maybe get a late-night snack from that 24-hour diner. I can't even recall the excuse I used. It was one of those flimsy lines I hoped she believed. The truth is, I needed fresh air. My heart was pounding. My gut told me something was off. I needed to think, or maybe I needed to catch her in a lie. I don't know anymore. I just know I left the house, circled the block, and waited. Sure enough, sometime close to midnight, I saw her slip out of the door. She wore this short coat, gray, belted at the waist, and I recognized it as the one she typically only wore on special nights. The coat that left her legs bare, a hint of thigh so distracting that I'd half lose my breath each time. She told me once she liked feeling the air on her skin beneath it. We used to have fun that way. But she wasn't wearing it for me this time. I followed her, quietly, heart hammering so loud I was sure the neighbors would open their windows and shout at me to keep it down. But no one did. I watched her get into a taxi. The driver pulled away. I had my car parked around the corner, and I tailed them at a distance, cursing under my breath every time I hit a red light. 1,000 crazy thoughts tore at me, each more painful than the last. Where the hell is she going? What if she's seeing someone else? My mind pictured some faceless stranger. Never once did I think it could be Jake. After all, he'd planned that entire party in my honor. He was my brother. He was the one who stuck by me in college, who used to watch out for me when I went through heartbreak, who shared bunk beds with me when we were little. The idea he might be that man? Impossible. I guess that's the nature of betrayal, you never see it coming from the people closest to you. I parked near a hotel downtown. Nothing too fancy, just a simple, practical place. Enough to not raise suspicion. I slipped into the lobby behind her. She didn't see me. Her attention was on her phone. She had a card key in her hand, which she waved a couple times in front of the elevator sensor, probably lost in her own anxious thoughts. She was biting her lip. I know that sign, she does it whenever she's anticipating something. The elevator door slid open and closed on her. I went to the front desk, half deranged with adrenaline, and asked if there was a reservation under the name Jake Harper. The desk clerk typed away at the computer, then nodded politely. Yes, he's got a room. He must have assumed I was either another friend or maybe a colleague. I forced a casual smile, patted my pocket as if I had a key on me, and made some comment about forgetting my room number. But I saw it on the screen. 8th floor, room 819. I waited. I don't know how long. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe half an hour. Time was jelly. All I could think was, Katie, you've done this. You've done this behind my back. My wife, the woman I once kissed under a maple tree in the Oregon hills, the woman who whispered she wanted my children one day, the woman who used to laugh when I tried to dance. She'd come here to be with my own brother. Eventually, I took a different elevator to avoid suspicion and stepped onto the 8th floor. My footsteps felt weighted, like I was walking through water. The corridor was quiet, stale. I heard the hum of vending machines around the corner. My hand shook as I tried the door. Locked. I pressed my ear to the wood. Nothing. Silence. Then a soft click from inside, or maybe I imagined it. My body was tense. I thought about just barging in, demanding an explanation. But I didn't want a scene. I wanted, what did I want? Redemption? Vengeance? I was too dazed to know. Finally, she must have stepped out, gone down to the lobby, or done something. Because a few minutes later, I saw her in the hallway, pacing, phone in hand, glancing toward the elevator as though expecting Jake any second. A short coat, no stockings, bare legs, and that look in her eyes that once was meant for me. If I believed in God or the devil, I would have prayed to them to turn back time and make this not be real. But it was real. She was texting, her face pulled tight with anger or worry. He never came. I don't know why. Maybe he had second thoughts, or maybe something else came up. I remember thinking, so the lover chickened out. The irony almost made me laugh in a sick, bitter way. She typed a quick text, probably to him. Then she tried me. She wrote, "Where are you?" Like I was an idiot who had no idea what was happening. She was playing the devoted wife. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I nearly flinched. I felt my soul crack in two. At that moment, I stepped into view. She froze. Her phone fell from her hand, bounced on the thin carpet. We stood there, maybe 10 feet apart, the fluorescent lighting washing out all color. I could see the shimmer of tears in her eyes. She parted her lips, about to say something. Then she closed them, and her shoulders slumped. She was caught. She knew it. "David," she began. I didn't scream. Didn't lunge at her. I just took a breath and said quietly, "So this is where you were going." She tried to stammer something, some explanation, some twisted apology. My ears weren't working right. My own heartbeat was louder than her words. I just said, "Let's go inside." Inside that room, stark, impersonal, with a neatly made bed, crisp white sheets, Katie's scent seemed too strong, her presence too intimate. She took a step back as I closed the door behind us. Her eyes darted to the table by the window, where a bottle of red wine waited. 2 glasses next to it. The lights were dim, the mood set. My blood boiled. I wanted to shatter that wine bottle. I wanted to flip the table. But I kept my cool. I walked over, poured a glass for myself, ignoring her trembling hand. She was breathing fast, blinking tears that threatened to spill. I tasted the wine, bitter, too acidic. I forced it down anyway. "He's not coming," she whispered. I just nodded. The air felt thick. She reached out to touch my arm, but I pulled away. She looked at me and tried again. "I'm sorry. David, it was." "Don't," I said, swallowing hard. "Don't explain. Just, let me talk." She fell silent, shoulders caving. Her face was pale, her green eyes huge. I sipped the wine again, tasting something metallic. Maybe it was just the adrenaline. My pulse hammered. I said, "You probably got tired of waiting, right? I know that feeling. I've been waiting for you, too. Waiting for the truth." A tear slipped down her cheek. Jake and I, she paused, voice shaking. He was just, she couldn't even form a sentence. So I finished it for her. He was just more exciting. Younger. Different. Less predictable. Right? My voice was as calm as I could manage, but inside, I was unraveling. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, choking on tears. I felt lonely. And he reached out. And it just. I repeated her words in a low voice. Lonely. He reached out. Each phrase landed like a hammer, echoing her admission. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. I felt nothing but a distant, numb ache. Like I was drowning in a slow-motion nightmare, hearing her confession from underwater. "David, I'm sorry," she managed. "I was stupid. I was confused. I love you, but we She stopped as she felt the change in me. I'd grown so still, you'd think I was made of stone. I stared into her eyes for what felt like an eternity. Then I forced a small smile that must have looked grotesque, because she shrank back. I said, "Sit down. Let me tell you how love dies." She sank onto the edge of the bed, hugging her arms around her torso as if she were cold. I spoke slowly, my voice raw. It doesn't die in an explosion of hate. It dies in little betrayals, in quiet moments when someone chooses something else over you. It dies every time a husband goes on a long trip and forgets to call, or every time a wife seeks comfort from a brother instead of waiting. It's slow, almost gentle. You don't even realize it's bleeding out. Then one day, you find yourself here, on the wrong side of the bed, in the wrong hotel room, wearing the wrong expression on your face. She was sobbing silently, tears streaming, lips trembling. But I barely heard it. I felt like I was delivering a eulogy at the graveside of my marriage. My voice was already in the crypt. I said, "Go on. Pour yourself some wine. Isn't that what you wanted, a romantic evening with him? Except now you're stuck with me, the man you hoped was clueless." She tried to speak, but words came out in broken gasps. Then she reached for the wine, hands shaking violently, and poured some into the other glass. It overflowed onto the table. She cursed under her breath and tried to wipe it with a tissue. The sight was absurdly pathetic, almost comedic, but there was no laughter left in me. I picked up the glass and sipped again. "To us," I said softly, "and to what we could have been." Her guilt was all over her face. She wanted to reach for me, to fold herself into my arms and beg forgiveness. But the tension around my eyes, the quiet fury in my voice, held her back. In that hush, I felt my chest tighten with something beyond anger, complete emptiness. I set the wine aside. "I'm going home," I said quietly. "Or maybe not. I don't know where I'm going anymore." She stood, eyes wide. "Please, wait. Let's talk. Let's fix." "Fix?" I repeated. "How do you fix a corpse? You're a designer, Katie. You know how color works. This marriage has bled out. There's nothing left in it but a stain." She let out a strangled cry. "Don't say that. David, I love you." I stared at her, letting her words roll around my head. My wife, wearing only a short coat and no underwear, in a room reserved under my brother's name, telling me she loves me. The irony was too big to process. I just shrugged. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice as hollow as I felt. "Stay here if you want. Wait for him if he decides to show up next time." She tried to stop me, placing a hand on my chest, but I gently pushed her aside. "Katie," I whispered, "you buried me here. This room is my grave. Congratulations." I walked out, letting the door close softly behind me. No dramatic slam, no final vow of revenge. Just the quiet whoosh of the latch catching. I guess I wanted to keep some shred of dignity. In the hallway, I stood there for a long moment, my forehead against the cold wall. My breath shuddered. My heart hammered. I wanted to punch something, but I couldn't move. Some part of me had already died in that room. I forced myself to straighten, to walk to the elevator. I pressed the button and heard the distant hum of machinery as the car ascended. My phone buzzed in my pocket, messages from her, maybe from Jake. I didn't look. When I stepped outside into the night air, it felt raw and sharp. The city lights flickered. The traffic was thin at this hour. A sense of finality washed over me, like I'd just stepped off a cliff and would never land. I got in my car, stared at the steering wheel, and felt the tears come. They were silent, scalding. I placed my head against the seat and let them flow. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, I started the engine and drove. A wave of numbness rolled in, like I was drifting behind tinted glass. I was a ghost in my own life, watching everything from a distance, hearing only echoes of what I used to be. I didn't go home right away. I drove randomly, passing closed stores, traffic lights that blinked at empty intersections. I ended up near the waterfront, where the smell of saltwater sometimes gave me peace. I parked, got out, walked along the pier. The reflection of the moon on the waves looked like a broken mirror. I stood there with my hands in my pockets, the breeze chilly against my face, and I imagined letting myself just slip into the dark water. I wanted to die. Or part of me did. It wasn't a noble or poetic notion. It was just an exhaustion so deep that existing felt pointless. The woman I had dedicated my life to had turned to my own brother for what I couldn't give her. My brother, Jake. The golden boy who charmed everyone, who always seemed to outshine me in ways I never believed possible. The last person on earth I would suspect. And yet, it made a twisted sense. She wanted spontaneity, excitement. I was the stable anchor. Jake was the blazing star. Stability is good for building a future, but sometimes people crave fireworks, not bricks. I closed my eyes, inhaled the cool, salty air, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad. I failed." I thought about my father, who always told me to be the man of the house, protect my loved ones, never let them feel alone. He died years ago, but his lessons rang in my memory. I'd let him down, let my wife down, let myself down. "I'm sorry," I repeated to the night, not knowing who I was apologizing to. My father, or me, or maybe to the ghost of the man I used to be before this betrayal. Dawn eventually came, pale and empty. I drove back home. The bed was untouched. She never came home. Probably too ashamed or too caught up in the aftermath. Maybe she spent the night in that hotel, crying her eyes out, or maybe she tried calling Jake. I didn't check my phone. I just pulled off my clothes, slid under the sheets, and stared at the ceiling. My mind spiraled in 1,000 directions. My chest felt hollow, but my eyes were dry. I'd exhausted my tears. 2 days passed in a haze of numbness. I told my boss I was sick. I canceled all obligations. I drifted around the house like a ghost, noticing every detail that reminded me of her, a hair tie on the bathroom sink, a notebook with her design sketches on the coffee table, half-finished laundry that still smelled of her perfume. It hurt so bad, I wanted to tear the place apart. But mostly, I just sat, lost in my head. Jake never came by. He didn't call, or if he did, I didn't answer. I could almost feel him cringing somewhere, maybe cursing himself for not showing up at the hotel that night, or for letting me find out. I pictured him pacing in his fancy loft, phone in hand, rehearsing what he'd say to me. The tension built inside me, but I refused to break the silence first. Katie texted me, tried calling. I read her messages when I had the nerve. "David, please talk to me. I need you to know how sorry I am. Can we fix this? I'll do anything." That kind of thing. She even tried showing up at the house once, pounding on the door, but I stayed quiet until she left. I saw her silhouette through the frosted glass, shoulders hunched, phone clutched to her chest. Part of me wanted to open the door and demand answers, to shout at her or maybe even hold her. But I felt disconnected from all of it. There was a part of me that had already died. 3 days after the hotel scene, I realized I couldn't just rot away in that house forever. I packed a duffel bag. Threw in random clothes, shoes, a jacket. I didn't have a specific plan, just knew I had to leave. I found myself driving again, heading east toward the mountains. The old roads my dad used to take us on when we were kids. I remember how Jake and I used to fight over the front seat, how we'd laugh at silly jokes. We were once so close, like best friends. How the hell had we become enemies? The mountains rose up, majestic and indifferent. I rented a small cabin near a lake we'd fished at years ago. The caretaker handed me a key, nodded politely, and didn't ask any questions. I spent the first night there in total darkness, listening to the wind outside. My phone kept buzzing, so I turned it off. I was alone with my thoughts. The ache was a physical thing, hollow and unrelenting. I don't know how many days passed, maybe 4, maybe a week. I wandered the trails, stared at the water, tried to breathe in the pine-scented air to soothe my shattered nerves. Sometimes I thought about stepping into that lake and letting the cold numb me until I sank. But I always stepped back. Cowardice or survival instinct, I couldn't tell. I had these half-dreams at night, Katie's face, tear-stained and pleading. Jake's grin, that confident smirk he used to wear as a kid. My father's voice telling me, "Son, do better." Then I'd wake up gasping. Once, I actually found myself whispering, "Why couldn't you love me enough?" But I wasn't sure if I was talking about her or about something else entirely. One morning, the caretaker knocked on my door. "Phone call for you." A woman. I jolted awake, feeling a spike of panic. I followed him to the main office, where an old landline phone sat on a dusty counter. Katie's voice trembled on the other end when I said hello. "David," she breathed. "Where are you? I've been worried sick. Please don't hang up." I swallowed the bitterness. "What do you need?" I asked, my tone as dull as the sky outside. She hesitated, maybe expecting anger or screaming. Then she rushed out, "I'm so sorry. I can't do this without talking to you. I hate myself for what I did. I need you to come back. I need to see you. Can we meet somewhere? Please." I stared at the grain in the wood of the counter. Part of me wanted to refuse, to vanish from her life. But I heard the sincerity in her voice, and some twisted sense of duty made me say, "All right. I'll come back." We agreed on a time. I hung up. The caretaker watched me with quiet sympathy. "You okay, son?" he asked. I nodded, thanked him, and went back to my cabin to pack. I felt numb, but decided I'd at least face her, face everything, then decide if I needed to run away again. Driving back to Seattle was surreal. My mind churned, anticipating what I'd say. Maybe I'd demand a divorce. Maybe I'd just stare at her until she broke. My heart pounded with a kind of dead calm. I felt like I was already gone, a specter returning to haunt the scene of my own murder. She asked me to meet at a small cafe by the waterfront. It was nearly empty when I arrived. She was there in a corner booth, wearing a simple blouse and jeans, her hair pinned back. She looked exhausted, eyes rimmed red, like she hadn't slept in days. I slipped into the seat across from her. She opened her mouth to speak, then clamped it shut. Her hands trembled, clasped together. A mug of coffee sat untouched in front of her. She finally forced out, "Thank you for coming." I nodded, said nothing. The waitress approached, but I waved her away. Katie stared at her own reflection in the window, then turned back to me. I don't know where to begin." "You slept with my brother," I said flatly. I could see her flinch. The words sounded cold, but I needed them said. She tried to protest, "It wasn't just," but I cut her off. "It doesn't matter how many times, or what it was exactly. You betrayed me." She pressed her lips together, tears forming. "You're right," she murmured. "I did. And I regret it so much. I can't explain it. I was lonely, I felt neglected, I felt like you, like we, just drifted. And Jake was there. He paid attention to me in a way I hadn't felt in so long." I let out a shuddering breath. "I was working for us, Katie. To build something stable. But you wanted excitement." It sounded bitter even to my ears. She nodded, wiping tears. "I know. I made a terrible mistake. I don't know how to fix it." I stared at her, this woman I once adored. She looked so small now, so fragile. My anger flared. How about telling me the truth about everything? She swallowed hard. It started a few months ago, after you came back late from one of those business trips. Jake and I were drinking at that bar near the office. I was venting about how distant you seemed. One thing led to another. Her voice cracked, and she trailed off. We met a few times. Then he got paranoid, felt guilty. We tried to end it, but apparently we couldn't, or we didn't. And then, the hotel night. So it's been going on, I said. You looked me in the eye every day, acted like everything was fine, and kept seeing my brother. She buried her face in her hands. I'm sorry, she whispered through her tears. For a long minute, I just listened to the ambient hum of the cafe. The soft clink of cups, a distant conversation from another table. My chest felt hollow. I thought about how once upon a time I would have died to protect her. Now I was the one who needed protection from her. And from Jake. She looked up. I'm asking for your forgiveness, David. I know I don't deserve it. But if there's any way, if there's still a chance. My eyes drifted to her left hand, where her wedding ring once glinted. Now it looked dull and meaningless. I asked myself, do I love her enough to try? Or am I just addicted to a memory? My mind flashed to that sterile hotel room. Her coat. Her eyes. The swirl of betrayal. Could I ever erase that? I said, I can't forgive you right now. I'm not sure if I ever can. You betrayed me in the worst way, and with the worst possible person. Do you realize that? Her head bowed. Yes, she croaked. Jake texted me, too. He wants to talk to you, to apologize. But he's afraid of what you'll do. I gave a short, humorless laugh. What I'll do? Maybe he's worried I'll punch him until his face caves in. He wouldn't be wrong. I felt the surge of anger in my veins, but it receded quickly. I was too drained for violence. Let him keep hiding. She swallowed. David, if we can't fix this, I understand. But please, don't destroy yourself. And please, at least hear Jake out. He's your brother. A wave of bitterness washed over me. Brother, I repeated. That word used to mean something. We sat in silence. Eventually, I stood. I'm done here, I said. She reached for my hand, and I let her take it for just a second. Her fingers trembled, her grip desperate. Then I pulled away. I need time. She nodded. Her tears glistened on her cheeks. I'll do whatever you ask, she whispered. If you need me to move out. You already left me the night you picked him, I said. Then I turned and walked out. I spent that evening in my car, parked outside an old baseball field where I used to watch local minor league games as a teenager. I stared at the empty bleachers. My father took me and Jake there countless times. We'd munch hot dogs, cheer for the local team. Jake was always the loudest, the life of the party. He'd tease me for being so serious. I used to envy how easily he connected with people. I never guessed it would cost me everything one day. My phone vibrated again, an unknown number. Probably Jake. I hesitated, then answered. His voice, Dave, hey, man, please don't hang up. I listened to him ramble. Look, I know I have no right to ask for anything. I just want to say I'm sorry. I was stupid. You were always the big brother I looked up to, and I messed it all up. I'm sorry. I wanted to scream, but the words came out quiet, measured. Jake, you didn't just mess up. You destroyed my life. I know, he whispered. And that's killing me. Let me see you, face to face. Let me apologize properly. Yell at me, punch me, I don't care, just. Where would we even start? I said bitterly. How do I look you in the eye and not want to break every bone in your body? You gave me a party for my homecoming, while you slept with my wife. That's not an accident or a slip. That's pure betrayal. He made a choked sound. I deserve anything you want to do to me. I was quiet for a long moment. Then I said, I'm not sure we can come back from this. He swallowed, audible over the phone. I get it. But if there's any way to show you how sorry I am. I clicked off. I didn't have the energy to keep listening. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and buried my face in my hands. The pain was relentless, like a raw wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. Days blurred. I existed in a state of limbo, staying in motels, occasionally checking in at work just to keep from being fired. My manager suggested a leave of absence, noticing how disheveled I looked. I told him I'd consider it. The truth was, I didn't care about sales or promotions or any of that. A quiet, lethal apathy had settled into my bones. Sometimes, I'd call my mother in Oregon, just short, empty conversations about her garden or the weather. I never told her the truth. She asked how Katie was, and I'd just say, she's fine. A lie, but easier than explaining the entire horror of it all. One evening, Katie texted me again, I've moved out of our house, staying with a friend. Let me know if you need anything. I'm sorry, David. Please take care of yourself. The last shred of normalcy in my life vanished with that message. I was alone in an empty shell of a marriage, an empty shell of a home. Maybe that was the best thing for now. A few more days passed. Then I decided I had to face the house again. I walked in, flicked on the lights. The emptiness felt suffocating. I wandered the rooms, each corner a memory. Our wedding photo was still on the mantel, me in a black tux, her in a simple white dress, both of us glowing with naive hope. I nearly smashed it but settled for shoving it face down in a drawer. At some point, Jake texted me one last time. He said he'd booked a flight back to Portland for a while, to give me space. He wrote, I'm so sorry. You're my brother. I hope someday you can forgive me. I stared at that message, thinking how final it sounded. Maybe he knew there was no returning from this. I deleted it. Weeks turned into a slow drip of monotony. I avoided neighbors, avoided friends, found ways to skirt any conversation that might lead to, how's Katie, or how's Jake? I was a hollow man going through the motions. I tried to eat regularly, but often I'd stare at a sandwich or a plate of food until it turned cold. Sleep came in restless fragments, full of nightmares I'd forget upon waking. One night, I decided enough was enough. The anger inside me wanted closure, or vengeance, or both. I got in my car and drove to that same hotel, room 819, just to see it. Maybe I was hoping to tear the walls down or demand the manager ban them for life. But the place looked mundane, like any budget downtown hotel. I walked into the lobby, drifted around as if searching for a memory, until the clerk asked if I needed help. I shook my head and left. What was I expecting? A chance to go back in time and rewrite the night? That's not how reality works. So I realized my only option was to let go. But letting go felt like losing a limb. The marriage, the trust, the illusions of love, they were part of me. Now, even if I could physically stand, I'd never walk the same again. Katie tried to see me again, but I refused. She said she might move back to California to be near her mother, try to rebuild her life. I said that was her choice. I was too broken to care. Some nights, I'd scroll through old photos, Katie smiling at the beach, me and Jake at a family barbecue, the three of us with my mother after a baseball game. I'd hold the phone in shaking hands, wondering, who am I now? Who am I without them? The question echoed in my mind like a stone in an empty well. Eventually, I contacted a lawyer to discuss separation. He told me the steps, the paperwork, the potential complications. I nodded numbly through the conversation. None of it felt real. The prospect of an official divorce was like reading someone else's story. But I told him I'd move forward with the process. I needed a clean cut. Like amputating a gangrenous limb, painful, but necessary. The next few weeks were a mental haze. I drifted between meetings with the lawyer, half-hearted attempts at returning to the office, and mindless nights staring at the TV. My phone remained silent most of the time. Occasionally Katie would send a message about practical matters, bills, forwarding addresses, whether to put the house on the market. I'd respond in the fewest words possible. We were polite strangers. The love had died too thoroughly to salvage. She once asked me to see a counselor together. To talk, if not for us, then just for closure, she wrote. I ignored it at first, but something in me stirred. After days of wrestling with myself, I agreed. We went to one session. It was weird, 2 chairs, a box of tissues, and a well-meaning therapist who tried to guide us through our feelings. I barely spoke. Katie cried. The therapist asked, "What do you want from each other right now?" And all I could say was, "Nothing. I have nothing left." Katie sobbed, "I just want him to be okay." The therapist tried to coax me into acknowledging that, but I just stared at the floor. Finally, I stood and left. That was the end of couples therapy. Time marched on. The documents were filed. Katie texted me that she was leaving for California at the end of the month. "I won't bother you again, but please know, I'll always regret what I did," she wrote. I read that text about 5 times, then deleted it. The only emotion it sparked was a dull ache, like pressing on a bruise. Jake sent me one last message, too, from Portland. "I'm out of your life, Dave. That's what I deserve. I'll never forgive myself. I'm so sorry." I stared at the phone, considered replying with a string of curses, or maybe a short, "Go to hell," but I found I didn't even have the energy for that. I left him on read. Throughout all this, something in me hardened. I moved like a man behind glass, untouchable, expressionless, dead inside. I realized I was in that place Katie couldn't enter. A realm of no forgiveness. A place where anger and sorrow fused into a single unyielding mass. People at work started noticing a difference in me. The manager said, "You're quiet these days, Dave. You used to be so dependable, so engaged." I just shrugged. I'd become a ghost in a suit, going through the motions. Sometimes, late at night, I'd recall the moment in that hotel room when I told her, "This is how love dies." Slowly. Almost gently. I realized it wasn't just about me and her. It was also about me and me, how I'd let a piece of my soul die. I tried to recall the version of myself who believed in fairness, in family, in second chances. That man was gone. I consider that moment in the corridor, the hush of that cheap carpet under my shoes, the beep of the elevator, her silhouette in a short gray coat, bare legs. The image is seared into my mind, an icon of betrayal. I wonder if I'll ever truly be free of it. I also remember leaving her alone in that room. It was a small victory, walking out on my own terms. Now, she sees me in her dreams, or so I imagine. Meanwhile, in waking life, I stand in a place she can't reach. A place beyond forgiveness. It's like a narrow ledge where I balance, not sure if I'll fall or if I'll ever move forward. But at least it's mine. She can't come here. Neither can Jake. I look at that empty plate in my kitchen again. It's still there, washed now, set neatly on the drying rack. An echo of something that once was. I think about everything that happened, Jake's grin, Katie's spark of excitement, my own ignorance. I realize I'm not the same man who left on that business trip. He died the night I caught her in the lobby with that key. In his place stands a man with an unhealed wound that might never properly close. There's a sense of finality in this acceptance. A calm, bitter knowledge that life goes on, but it goes unchanged. I pick up that plate, hold it in my hands. I picture smashing it against the floor, letting the shards fly. Instead, I set it back on the countertop gently. I need no more destruction. What's done is done. I wonder who I am now. A divorced man. A victim of betrayal. A fool who didn't see it coming. Or maybe just another statistic in the endless parade of broken marriages. But none of those labels capture the raw emptiness in my chest. People keep telling me to move on, as though it's a simple step. But moving on is like learning to walk after losing a leg. Each step is awkward and uncertain. Yet I'm still upright, breathing. That must count for something. The silence around me is heavy, but at least it's honest. I'm not lying to myself anymore. So I stand here, in my kitchen, thinking of how Katie is gone, how Jake is gone, how my father is gone, how my illusions are gone. The only one left is me, and I'm not sure who that is anymore. Maybe that's the real heartbreak. But I keep breathing. Because that's all that's left to do. I glance at the clock. Time keeps rolling forward, indifferent to my personal tragedy. Outside, the Seattle rain taps against the window. I close my eyes and let the watery gray light wash over me. For a second, I imagine walking out that door and just disappearing forever. But I won't. I'll keep living, one day at a time, in that numb space where I don't forgive and I'm not forgiven. Where the man I was is buried, but something else crawls up from the dirt, half alive and half dead, still searching for who he might become. And that's where she can't follow. In a room of my own making, behind a locked door labeled no forgiveness. Maybe someday I'll walk out of it. Maybe not. For now, I just stand here, plates and forks and half light, a half man with half a soul, haunted by a short gray coat and a brother's face. I'm done.